Hey, it's Jim with Cloud Bedrock and developer of CribOps. I'm happy to announce we've launched CribOps for Mac. You can download CribOps for Mac via our GitHub repo, which I'll put in the comments below. Scroll down until you find the link for the macOS version. You'll click that. You'll download it. You'll open the disk image, which will show the installer. Okay, once we have the installer ready, we'll double click on the package installer. And this is going to go through the standard installation. Agree the license, click install. It's going to prompt you for your Mac username and password. And once it's finished installing, it will also open up a browser to a page that probably has this very same video on it as well. So what that has now done is it has installed CribOps as a desktop app as well as a CLI. But we're going to be predominantly focused on the desktop app. So I'll go ahead and launch this. Okay, so now CribOps has launched. Basically, CribOps is a tool that allows you to deploy N8N and related resources automatically on your behalf to any one of a number of AWS accounts. So you can have unlimited numbers of projects and unlimited numbers of AWS accounts. So super handy for a freelancer or an agency or just a person that works in an organization that has the needs for managing multiple environments. What we have here is the desktop app, and you can come up here to the help and look for software requirements because there are a couple things that are required in order for this to work well. The CLI is automatically installed, so this most likely will always be showing as installed. The next one is the Amazon CLI, and there's instructions on how to get that installed. And then the AWS Session Manager plugin, and that's used for creating a secure tunnel between your computer and AWS to access the database, to then use with tools like Table Plus or pgadmin or any other Postgres GUI or CLI manager for the database. And then finally, just some recommended tools, Table Plus. We actually have an easy button for that will automatically open your database tables via that tunnel, which is one command. It'll pop it right open. And then there's pgadmin as well. Table Plus is a paid tool. pgadmin is free. Once you've got that sorted, the next thing is to get your AWS credentials added. You can manage that here on the AWS menu. Click AWS Profile Management, and you can either just create a new profile and manually enter the information in, but likely you already have AWS credentials on your machine. If you have the AWS CLI and you may have more than one credential, it's pretty common. So you can just click Import. And then you have two options, either import from environment variables if you have set those for your particular machine, or the AWS config file. That's the one that's installed automatically when you create or you install the Amazon CLI. And then this profile name, if you've got named profiles in there, you can add them. I did, and that's how I've added that one. And you can also use the default. I'll go ahead and put the default in here as well. And so now it's created two. They're effectively the same thing in my case. But so you can import or manually add as many AWS profiles as you want. And those are just essentially credentials that allow you, as the user of the CribOps desktop, to provision resources in the Amazon accounts that you have selected. So the next thing is projects. So if you're going to have more than one project, I definitely recommend that you create a workspace. And so you can do that from here, create new, and we're going to call this, let's see, YT demo. And then it's going to ask you where you want to save it. And a handy place to save if you're a Mac user and you have iCloud is to use your iCloud drive, and you could save it there. You'd save it wherever you'd like. And then the next piece is once you have a workspace created, then you can create projects, and the projects will be automatically related to that workspace. So you can think of it as the workspace is like your organizational tool for all of your projects. And then maybe you might have one workspace per customer, or you could just have one giant workspace that has all of your projects in there. If it's one per customer, then you might do something like have a dev environment and a QA environment and live environment, or you might just have one project and that's all you have. It's up to you. It really just depends on how you have things set up. So we'll save that. And so now we have this project, and it has been connected to that AWS identity. So from this point, if we wanted to make a deployment, all we have to do is click the deployment button. It's going to automatically create the stack name, and you can name this whatever you want, but it's going to name it whatever the project name was. The next thing it's asking for is a domain name. So that is the domain name that you want to reach your n8n instance that this is going to deploy. If DNS is managed by AWS, which in this case, in my demo here, it will be, then it's super easy because this application will automatically create the SSL certificate and automatically verify it by creating records in DNS. If your DNS is managed outside of the AWS account in Route 53, it still works. It will detect that, and it will prompt you to create the DNS records in whatever DNS service you have, and you just copy paste it and then click verify, and it'll work just the same. You just have a couple extra steps, both at the SSL creation time here and at the very end when the deployment's complete. It'll ask you to create one more, which is a CNAME record for your load balancer. So here I'm going to say ytdemo1.cribops.com because that is one of the domains that I have inside of here. So then I'm going to use, we'll just use Northern Virginia. And then here you select the size of the instance, and the larger the instance, the more Amazon's going to charge you. And these are estimates. They're not exact because it varies by region. It varies by whether you have an arrangement with Amazon and you're making commitments to them, and then your compute prices are going to be lower. This is just a rough estimate. Down here on the advanced options, we automatically check the enable auto updates. And what that means is once a day or once a week or whatever custom schedule you have, it will automatically update n8n with zero downtime, meaning that the n8n workflows will continue to work. It will update one of the n8n nodes and launch it, and then turn off the old one, and without any downtime. The other option we have here, which I recommend if it's for production use, is enable high availability. And what that will do is create an additional read-only copy of your database and have that available to fail over to in the event there's a problem with the primary, or if it's during the maintenance window, which you've selected down here, and there's a minor update that has to be done, that will be a planned outage, if you will. Unless you enable that high availability, then likely everything will keep running because the failover time is about 20 to 30 seconds. And normally things just keep running without fail. So then we just hit next, and then we say deploy. Now, the first thing you'll see is it's requesting an SSL certificate. And then once it's done that, it will go through the process of verifying. So all of this, because in this particular demo, the domain is hosted in Route 53 in AWS. And so it's able to not only create the request for the certificate, but also create the records in DNS to verify. So it's going to go off and do that. And then once that's complete, it will start the process of uploading the files and making the calls to Amazon to provision all the resources on behalf of this particular project. And it's more than just deploying a single VPS, which the vast majority of videos out there and published documents out there on how to install N8N self-hosted in the cloud, the vast majority of those are showing a single virtual machine, a virtual private server instance in the cloud with everything on that instance and an IP address attached to it, which is effectively a single point of failure for your N8N, right? Because if anything happens and fails, N8N is down. So in this case, it's deploying much more than that. It's deploying a resilient database, especially if you check the box for high availability, that is continuously backed up, that you can do point-in-time recovery on for the database, as well as you are given access to the database to do other things, either include that database as part of your infrastructure or your workflows. So just typical N8N native Postgres integration. And we also enable PG Vector on a database and provision that as well, so that you can use it for RAG workflows inside of N8N. And finally, we have a one-button easy database setup where it will create all those databases, example databases, and the RAG database, a memory database for using Postgres memory for your workflows, and a CRM database that you can just use for your own purposes. It will automatically create the connections to those databases, and it's literally like a single button click and we'll show that. So here, this is a little bit like watching paint dry because it takes about 10 minutes. So we'll speed up this process. Okay, the deployment is completed, and you'll see at the bottom there's a link to go to the domain name that you chose. And when you do, it'll go to your familiar first login experience. Okay, so once you're in, the next step is to create an API key. So you're going to go into settings and then an API key. Create one with no expiration. I'm just going to say test. And don't get excited because all this is getting deleted at the conclusion of this video. You're going to copy that API key. Then you're going to go back over to CribOps. You can hit done here. And then you click on this little disclosure and go to setup databases. Now it's already got the URL put in. It's already got the region and the stack selected. So literally all you have to do is type or paste in your API key, hit test credential, and assuming you didn't have any problems with the copy pasta, then you come down here to set up databases. Now that's going to go out and talk to Amazon, and Amazon is going to create the additional databases from the secure credentials that it has in the system parameter store up in Amazon. It's going to create the tables. It's going to create restrictions on which users have access to which tables. And then it's also going to make a call to N8N and create credentials for all of those tables. So it's already done. So now if we hit done and come back over here to the N8N installation, go back to settings, go over to the credentials, you will now see, like magic, that there's multiple credentials created. There's the one for the N8N database itself. There's one we created for memory, and then the user only has access to memory. For security purposes, we've got one for CRM. It's just an empty database. We have one called RAG, and that has PG Vector enabled. And then we also have an IAM credential that we've given access to just a handful of things to give you something to play with. There's an S3 bucket. There is a SQSQ, there's an SNS topic, and then there is a DynamoDB table, just to give you something to play with. So essentially now you're able to create workflows that leverage these credentials and leverage the resources that have been created on your behalf to make this far more useful than just installing an instance on a VPS. Remember also that AWS has hundreds of services available to you all within this AWS environment. so long as you grant access to the AWS credential that we've created for you, or you create your own and update the policy to add whatever access is required across all those portfolio of products, you have a pretty substantially complete offering that you can give your customer. Once you've set up the database, the next really cool thing you can do is connect to it. So, unlike other solutions out there that have their databases hosted in the cloud and are giving public access to the database, in this particular instance, the Amazon Aurora RDS Postgres, say that fast 5 times database, is in a private network. So it's not publicly accessible. N8N has access to it, and all of your workflows have access to it, but the public does not, which is far safer. What you can do, though, is still, if you want to connect to it to manage it, say with a graphical user interface, Table Plus, or a free tool, PG Admin, etc. So you come down here to Connect Database. And this is where you will need to have the additional items that we talked about earlier, the AWS CLI, the SSM manager, et cetera, right? But you can come here. Here it's asking for a port. If you don't have Postgres running on your machine locally, then you don't have to change the port. If you do, then you might need to change the port so it doesn't conflict with your Postgres locally. This is a local port that it's referencing. Then here, I'm going to say auto connect with database client because I have Table Plus installed. If you have a third-party tool besides Table Plus, then you'd want to also say show password and output, and it will actually display the password that you can then copy and paste into whatever Postgres management tool you want to use. From that point, you'll click Open Terminal with Command. It's going to ask you if it's okay to access terminal on the first time, and then after that, it won't ask you again. It's also going to come in here and ask for permissions to remotely control terminal. And you can either say, no, I'm going to paste this in manual, which would be to paste that command in, or you can come in here to System Settings. And allow CribOps to control the terminal. So it's just basically going to enter the commands for you. Super handy. So let's try it one more time. Now it's making a connection to Amazon, tunneling, and then it used the custom port that I had just to demonstrate that you can do it. And now it's also opened Table Plus, which is a paid but super nice graphical user interface that allows you to manage your databases. And then you can come up here and pick any of the databases that we auto created for you. Remember I said we created one for memory, and N8N workflows will automatically create the elements in there to use it when you select it in your workflow as a Postgres memory. And RAG, it's pre-configured to enable it to work with RAG and PG Vector. Yeah, we think that's pretty handy. That's a far more secure method of accessing the database, and the database itself is quite enterprise ready for use for any kind of workflows that you want to throw at it. When you're done, just Control-C to disconnect that. You can close terminal, and you can access that whenever you want. And remember also that as you have more and more projects in there, it's going to automatically connect using the right credential to the right database, et cetera. You can have as many of these as you want. So you can bounce back and forth and manage databases, create tables, create users, all the things. Another use case would be maybe you vibe coded a project and now you want to host the application and leverage that same database and kind of leverage the spend. You can do that as well. So you can create the database, install the application in Amazon sitting right next to your N8N, and use N8N either as a backend or as an integration point with your vibe coded projects. That's it. If you're looking for support for CribOps, a great way to do that would be to join our Skool community at www.skool.com/CribOps, where you can get access to me and other community members to help solve your CribOps related or AWS and NADN related workflow problems.